Today we're going to take notes on the Great Depression. This is a major recession in U.S. history, and so today we're just going to do a quick overview on some of the causes and effects of the Great Depression. So first thing, the Great Depression really starts after the stock market crash. Investors sold stock in large numbers because they were nervous about the rising interest rates. And whenever people are rapidly selling stock, it causes the stock market to do funky things. There was a banking crisis that happened to coincide with this. Borrowers began defaulting on their loans, aka they were unable to pay their loans back, and so a lot of the poor were causing the bank to be low on cash because banks were not bringing in the money that they anticipated bringing in. People panicked and tried to withdraw their money, and so there was a major run on the bank. As a result of the banking crisis and the stock market crash, people were unable to buy products. Businesses scaled back on production, therefore they had to fire and lay off employees. Unemployment rate went from 3.2% of the population to 23.6% of the population, so a major jump in unemployment. Just to put it in perspective, in 2008, unemployment was still below 10%. So unemployment in 2008 was nothing compared to the unemployment in the Great Depression. Some of the causes of the Depression. There are three theories on the cause. One, there was sort of a global depression following World War I. This sort of there was a big boom, and then there was a big depression after World War I. And so people think that the depression in the United States was just part of this global depression. Other people argue that the unequal distribution of income, you have people that are the richest of the rich sort of exploiting the poor, and the poor being unable to secure decent loans, etc., led to the Great Depression. You can think about the story The Great Gatsby as an example of that unequal distribution of wealth. Other people argue that the Great Depression is just part of the normal business cycle in economic theory, and there is some validity to this. People argue that there will be another Great Depression to come because the government has basically just been stalling through some of its recovery plans since, such as the New Deal, and so every time the government subsidizes and tries to fix the normal business cycle, they're just sort of postponing the inevitable. So other people argue that this is just normal. These ebbs and flows in the economy are normal, and we just need to let them happen. So President Hoover, who's president at the time of the Great Depression, was against direct relief. Basically, he believed in the American spirit of hard work and pulling oneself up from the bootstraps. He believed people support the government, it's not the other way around. So the government did not have a duty, in his opinion, to help the poor people. And so he felt strongly that we are a government of the people, and that we are not a government for the people. He did not want to have a bigger government. He was opposed to big government. He was sort of against the progressive ideals of the 19-teens, and really did not want to have government oversight or control in economics. We call his theory or his perspective something like rugged individualism, meaning it's tough, it's rugged, you kind of have to suck it up and recognize your role in your situation. And so he believed strongly that the American people needed to pull themselves up. Hoover did implement something called the RFC, which is the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. This was essentially his big attempt to fix the problem. He used trickle-down economic theory, which is an economic theory that if you help the top percentage of Americans, aka the richest percent of Americans, to do better. They will employ poorer people, and everybody will do better as a result. So don't give money to the poor. In fact, give money to the rich, and it will eventually trickle down to the poor people. There's some legitimacy to this theory, because the idea here is that the rich are obviously good with money. They're the people that would be hiring people. They obviously know how to make good investments, and so we should be giving the money to them. So he lent money in order to stabilize banks, and so basically put the money back into the banking system. His idea is that recessions are good for the economy, and they weed out bad business, and so the people that are really struggling in this business are the bad business owners. Interestingly enough, Henry Ford actually did pretty well during the Great Depression. So there is some legitimacy to this argument and to his theory here. One of the things that really hurt the Hoover administration was the bonus army. World War I veterans who were struggling during the Great Depression demanded that they be paid early payment for their pension bonuses. They became known as the bonus army as a result. So basically, they are struggling in this economy, and they want to get their money early. Makes sense? So they came to D.C. to protest and try to pass legislation in order to get their money early. They set up camp along the Potomac River, which is a river right through D.C., and this sort of camp, along with other camps of poor people during this time, was called Hooverville. Hoover had the current army kick out the bonus army. So imagine this picture. You've got all these veterans, maybe 10, 20 years older than the current military folks, and they're camped up, demanding their money, living in poverty, and you've got the current army coming through on horseback with weapons, kicking out the old army. And this is sort of just a really fascinating moment in U.S. history. Hoover was obviously rejected. He was hated by many, especially after his treatment of the veterans. And in 1932, FDR won election easily. Tomorrow, or Monday in class, we will be learning about the New Deal.